Many have speculated on the reasons behind the UK's productivity puzzle, as I often hear it being referred to. But there is still no consensus really on that root cause. But when I'm talking about individual organizations, there are various steps that business leaders can take that will significantly improve productivity, which include the right technology, enhancing team collaboration, eliminating communication barriers. Our recent research has shown that companies that do take these steps to provide their employees with right technology resources and training, they're considerably more likely to experience high levels of productivity. 88% of people in highly productive businesses that we spoke to feel that they do have the appropriate tools at hand. So while, as I said, there's no consensus of the root cause, I think that it's important to recognize that toggling between apps and just trying to find information all the time is such a huge time waster. So having one system or being able to know where to find the information really helps to eliminate cross-functional silos and barriers to ensure that the correct collaboration is in place. There are a few standout differences between the high productivity and low productivity organizations. So open channels of communication were found in 91% of high productivity businesses, compared to only 8% of low productivity organizations, which shows just how important that communication is. High levels of team cohesion were also found in 94% of highly productive businesses, but only 13% of low productive organizations. And then also 88% of people in high productive organizations, as I mentioned before, said they were provided with the correct technology to help them thrive. And this drops quite considerably to 48% in low productive organizations. There's also quite a lot of correlation between high productivity and better job satisfaction, also work-life balance and higher motivation. And these really keep employees staying at businesses for a longer period of time. True flexibility and new ways of working are really important. And it does differ across industries. So the 4-day work week has shown huge promise in trial programs. 92% of all businesses are saying that they would stick with the working week, shorter working week, that have taken part in the pilot program. But of course, this model doesn't work for everyone. So ClickUp's research has shown that implementing a shorter working week will have differing levels of success depending on the sector you work in. For example, 80% of IT and telecoms believe it's realistic to adopt that 4-day working week, but that goes down to 55% of those working in education, as of course there are certain roles that need to be on site for a specified number of hours. Myself working at ClickUp, I am obviously in that technology sector. I do flex my hours depending on what time zones I'm working in, what the business need is. So I think that businesses need to ask themselves, can all roles be performed with flexibility that isn't then detrimental to business performance? And also, how much further can productivity be improved to support that required flexibility? It's important to create a culture that's focused on results rather than the presenteeism aspect. And also just investing in the ways that will enhance productivity. I agree that output and results in knowledge economies are much more important than the numbers of hours spent at work. And this is really ultimately based on trust and communication. But I do recognize some industries, such as finance and legal firms, they do require that time tracking from a billing perspective. But employees still shouldn't feel micromanaged or monitored, because that's likely to harm productivity and also employee satisfaction if they don't feel like the trust is there. There's a disconnect as well between how productive employees think that they are versus what their managers think. And this is why more companies are monitoring productivity. But there's also a difference between monitoring and measuring. So productivity monitoring is using systems and tools to check on employees to ensure that they're not slacking off, for example. And this surveillance is really demotivating. But by contrast, the productivity measurement is a practice that's rooted in the transparency and fairness and trust that I spoke about. And this really empowers teams and leads to the best results. Another angle of this very much sits with the managers. I think it's important for them to be very clear about what success looks like in a role and give meaningful feedback regularly, just to ensure that everyone understands which tasks should take priority and why. I think productivity, people often think of it as just completing tasks on an arbitrary to-do list and ticking off a checklist. But it's so important to give flexibility in the work environment, transparency and openness to make sure that people can get the task done. I think that most of the time when HR processes hinder productivity, it's because of a lack of automation and scalability as well. I think if you can make sure that everything is automated where possible and scale it so it's repeatable, that takes away a lot of the hindrance around HR processes. I think for me, I love looking at the culture of organizations. So rather than ditching processes, I would actually encourage businesses to see how culture plays a really critical role in improving productivity and just emphasize the importance of building a really strong and inclusive culture. I think taking that initial step is brilliant. So, as a first three, I would say invest in the appropriate technology and tools. This will really enable everyone to work together and enjoy their work and know what they're achieving. Create that positive culture. So, we've spoken a lot about trust and open channels of communication. I think it's really important to have that set and standardized. Of course, make tweaks along the way, but setting out the initial expectation is very important. And then just ensure high levels of team cohesion and culture. I think that it's important to have those relationships in place and just drive towards the goals.